Welcome to Rev MD, a podcast created for healthcare professionals by healthcare professionals. We will share tips on medical billing and coding, as well as workflow optimization to help practices succeed, thrive, and grow revenue. All right, welcome back to another podcast for Rev MD. I am so excited to have Dr. Sarah here today to talk about her own practice, ways that she's been able to grow revenue within her own field, but then also a very special service that she provides for private practices and some really amazing tips to help practices thrive, especially in a time where it's so critical that we're paying attention to our revenue, we're paying attention to profitability. And so with that, I'm excited to welcome Dr. Sarah. So welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much. I am so excited to be doing this today.
Yes. Okay. So I am so excited. We've had a little bit of time to chat today beforehand, but talk to me about you and your specialty and what you do.
Okay. Well, I am podiatry, and I have been practicing over in the Washington State, kind of Western Washington area for about 8 years, going on year 9. I've had private practice now, been profitable since like month 3 when I started.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting, like the marketing strategies to get there and, really kind of watching everything and watching it grow. And it's funny now because I look at how many patients I see in a week and I think back like, God, I remember when I was excited to have like 15 patients in a week. Like that was a huge milestone. And then now I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 15 new patients this week. This is a little overwhelming.
That's awesome. So talk to me about, so how did you, like high level, talk to me about that first year? How did you get profitable in 3 months? I mean, that's incredible for those of, our listeners who say didn't have that success. Like, what were your key strategies?
I had some time to think about it before I went into practice and really kind of officially opened my doors. And I think the biggest things that are helpful is figuring out what your specialty service is going to be like, what's going to make you different. And if you can start out your marketing on what those things are and not try to play the game that you're going to be like everybody else, it already makes you stand out like above whoever's in your area, right? So that's part 1. And then part 2 is making sure that you're like communicating with the primary care physicians. I mean, that's like, those are your point of contact where they're going to have the most exposure to as many potential patients of yours as possible. So like making sure you're sending your notes and just communicating with them, letting them know that you're there is huge. So as soon as I like got really going and started sending my notes back to primary care and, messaging them and asking if they had any questions about our care plan, it just exploded from there. Cause then they were like, oh my gosh, somebody who communicates. And I just started getting referrals.
That's awesome. I mean, it's funny how just simple things like communication and follow-up are really the keys to, growing your own business. And we've seen the same thing. I mean, just communicating with our clients at a very, detailed way, sometimes depending on what's going on with the client, is truly critical. So that's awesome.
And we need that. So I'm so thankful you're doing this.
Oh.
Private practice, we need this.
It has grown. We're so excited just to help and reach and educate. And even those of our listeners who aren't clients, just being able to share tips so that every single person recognizes there is a way to be profitable in private practice. There is a way to help and get your revenue to grow, but you just have to have some key strategies to really pay attention to. So,
yeah. And some systems in place so you don't lose track. I totally agree. Yeah,
exactly. So talk to me about ways that you've grown your own revenue in your practice that maybe weren't just patient related. I mean, I think thinking outside of the box is so important for practices and would love to hear how you've done that.
Yeah. So I knew that when I went into practice, I did not want to work like 6-7 days a week, just playing the volume game. Like it just wasn't what I wanted and it wasn't going to fit the life that I wanted to have. So I had started thinking about like other sources of income, passive income, things that can happen while I'm not in the office. And honestly, like I wanted to do this back in residency. I never understood why podiatry did not have like manicure and pedicure spas, like out of their office. So I looked into it and I kind of waited for about 5 years after graduation, looking around like nobody's doing this. Why is nobody doing this? And then just realized, no, it's because it's a separate business. And I understand people may not want to take that on, but really, truly, it was so easy. So when I got into my own space in 2020, I built it out with the full intent of having this medical manicure and pedicure spa that essentially rented out space from me as an office. And that business runs by itself. Like it actually technically has nothing to do with the practice. And that's, for legal reasons. And I highly recommend if people are going to do stuff like this, definitely talk to your attorney first, make sure that you're covering all your bases.
Always.
Yeah, always, please
always.
Do me a favor and do that. Your lawyer will appreciate it later. And, it's not based on the practice. So, she has clients that come in. I have a certified nail technician, but I had a hand in designing the whole business and choosing the products that I know are safe for people. And it goes in with my practice in a sense that I have a lot of people that can't go to a normal pedicure or manicure place because it's just not safe. They're diabetic, they have autoimmune, they're going through chemotherapy, but we can provide that because I know how to sterilize everything and I know what products are safe for people to use. So I incorporated that knowledge that I already had that I would prescribe for patients anyways, and essentially provided them with a service that they didn't have otherwise. And it just makes money Monday through Saturday when I'm not in the office, which is great.
I mean, and that's what it's all about, right? There's got to be, and no matter what you do for a career, it's multiple streams of income.
Yes.
Making sure that you can build things that do end up becoming passive, because otherwise, and I forget, it's got to be Warren Buffett, I think, who said, something about making sure that we're making money while we sleep. And so that is awesome.
Yep. Yeah. Well, especially now, like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I got COVID. I was out for a week. It was miserable. But you know what? My spa still ran.
Right.
There was still money coming in. Right. It was great. So
that's fantastic. I love hearing stories like that. So talk to me a little bit about just your own journey with medical billing and revenue and how you've had to kind of really stay on top of things.
Oh my goodness. You want the full rundown?
Yes. Do it.
Yeah. Okay. So I've done this a few different ways at this point. The very first practice that I came into, the gentleman, I was kind of office sharing. He was running his thing. I was running mine. And the gentleman really wanted to have an in-house biller, but he had kind of decided to hand it off to somebody who had absolutely no training as a biller. And there was kind of the assumption that well, I know how to bill for this, so I will teach this person how to do this for me. And I think that does your practice a disservice, now hindsight being 2020, of course. As it turned out, the reason I really didn't make any money the first few months was because I started looking into why am I not getting paid? Why am I not getting paid? And it was because this guy was making the same amount of money hourly if he followed up on 2 claims as if he followed up on 20. And I had all of these claims that were just shoved in a drawer and never sent in. I'm not even kidding. I found them in a desk drawer. I was livid. Oh but this is the kind of thing that if you're not following up on it, nobody cares about your money as much as you do. That's the phrase we all need to keep in mind. Yes. So, I think the expectation in that sense of having somebody in office that there's no real incentive for them to go after your money, they're getting paid regardless. Right. So I don't even know that was fair to, assume he would be really, chasing down my claims and stuff. But the thing I did learn about billing companies was that they do it based on, a percentage of what's collected. Correct. And oh my God, it's so much better because they're incentivized to collect money for you.
Correct. Why they don't get paid unless you get paid.
Right. Exactly.
And it's interesting because I think one of the things I've seen as we've taken on clients who've come from other billers, right, is that they don't have somebody overseeing the metrics, or they don't have somebody overseeing the process, right? Yep. And there are different levels of billers in terms of experience, in terms of focus or desire, like you said, to go after other people's money. And most of those individuals are, like you said, getting paid hourly.
Yeah.
So to me, I think it really all comes down to that overarching review and support.
Yes.
The metrics, obviously, and as you know, we teach a regular medical billing metric course. And so
Yes.
for any of our listeners who are listening, you can go to nationalrevenueconsulting.com/metric mastermind, and you can come and see and sign up for one of our waitlist classes. But back to the big picture, right? If you don't have somebody who's overseeing that and looking at that and going, okay, we've had 1 month that didn't turn out well, that didn't look good. Let's fix that now, not 6 months when you figure out that your bank account doesn't look
right.
Right.
And I'll admit, like, I've been guilty of doing that too. I'm not going to say I'm perfect. Like, you get busy, you forget that it's June and the last time you did anything was January. Those things do happen, but I totally agree. I have staff that is dedicated to following our key performance indicators. We have KPIs for the practice that I follow that are done monthly. And it's the same thing that I work with when I've worked with billers. Like, we go and sit down and go through our accounts receivable, our AR, at least monthly, if not every other month, if things are running really smoothly. Perfect example is that we had an interruption in claims, obviously, in June and July, because we were trying to transfer over systems and, takes weeks to get that stuff up and going. So I've been waiting in the bank account for kind of this like big bubble to happen, and it's just not been happening. And I started looking at it and it was like, man, Medicare hasn't paid me in like a month and a half. Well, I know I've seen Medicare patients. So, I went in and talked to her about it, and, she had submitted the claims like she was supposed to, but I was like, I think there's a problem between, our software and the clearinghouse. I think something is not communicating somewhere, and we need to figure out where that is, because they're usually really good about paying like weekly. Right. So she looked into it, and sure enough, we've had like 300 claims in the last 3 weeks that just never made it to the clearinghouse.
Right.
And we talked to our company, our software company. They've said they fixed it. We're obviously keeping a close eye on that. But she turned around and sent in like 300 paper claims.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was a lot. And unfortunately, if I wasn't keeping at least a little side eye on that kind of thing, I probably wouldn't have noticed, because 3 to 4 weeks is still within a reasonable time frame that some slower insurances just haven't paid.
Yeah.
And I think me from 6 years ago probably would have been like, oh, I'll just keep waiting,
Right.
doing the good thing and doing my medicine and not worrying about it. When in actuality, like, no, the one I wasn't getting payment from really is on top of paying. And I needed to be on top of that. I think being a business owner in general is just having that flexibility that just because something works right now doesn't mean it's going to work for you 2-3 years from now. And it doesn't mean that that wasn't the right answer, that you're still searching for this. There is no one perfect answer to anything. And I think we get hung up on that when it comes to like trying to find billers or trying to find a billing company. I heard a lot about that from, other private practice owners. They're like, well, I'm going to go with this one. This is going to be the answer. And it's like, I don't even know if that's, what I mean? Like, I think you need to find the right match for you.
Yeah.
And like, you're so
on top of it.
Yeah. And you're so experienced with like managing larger accounts that like, that's going to be hugely beneficial. Cause I think for private practice, we just get so focused on like our daily, day to day, each patient, you go from each problem that it's just, you tend to lose that bigger picture, and you need a team that's going to help you keep an eye on that.
Yes. You have to be able to level up at the end of the month and take a look at things, look at the revenue, look at the receipts. We track things like, charge per visit, charge per
Oh, yes. Because thank you.
Then you can track and trend, okay, shoot, what's going on here? And it may be a payer contract issue, it may be a billing process issue, but you have to have, a set of metrics. And sometimes I feel like, for us, we have metrics that are big picture, right? Just a high level, just a few. Mm-hmm. And I have that on one tab. And then we get into the details on other tabs, because there are going to be some physicians who are part of that practice who just want to see that big picture. And then there's the owners or others that are going to want to dive into the details. Yeah. And so it's, how do we switch between that big picture view and then get into the weeds when you need to,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm trying to, now help other private practices realize, like, how do you use these numbers too? right?
Yes.
For your practice, because I love that you guys are doing that. Cause like I've asked for reports where it's like, we break down, per code that cause you have like
Yes.
25 or 30 codes that you'll bill, per code by insurance, like what is the average I'm getting paid on these? And it's helped me make decisions as to which insurances to drop, because I'm technically kind of a hybrid at this point.
Yeah.
I don't take all insurances, and there's some that are on that chopping block
Yep.
that like those reports are super helpful for me. So
Like that. And that's a good segue. So talk to me about, your company and that service that you provide, and, really how you're getting in there and helping other private practices.
Oh yeah. So I started a company this year called Visionary Practice Solutions. The whole idea is to help other private practice potential owners or owners, create a vision of life and practice that like they deserve, that they want. And whether that is, the help going from, zero to getting your doors open. If I had had the help starting out, I mean, I would have gotten there so much quicker. Or, deep diving into people's current existing practices to really spend like, 6 months or a year just focusing in on, okay, what are the goals you have for your practice? How do we get you there? And it's everything from, okay, you have higher revenue goals than you're currently bringing in. Let's look at ways to do that, and billing is one of those ways. The other thing is passive sources of income, like I talked about with the spa, and sometimes it's the people just want to have more time to be home with their family. Okay, great. Let's have you work less. I work 3 days a week right now, and I'm profitable and I'm able to pay my bills and do what I need to do. And if that's what you want, maybe we relook at how your hours are being done, the efficiencies in your office, what other services you're offering that maybe aren't necessarily billing through insurance. So it's just coming up with really creative ways to help people make the practice what it is they want. You went and invested all of this time and money into getting here. Like you deserve to have that. So
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's helping tailor that, like you said, individually, right? Like some people may be at a point in their career where they want to cut back even further, or some people may be at that ramp up stage. And how do I get more patients? And how do I, market myself? And all of that is very dependent on your specialty and your type of practice and what you envision for yourself,
Yeah. Yeah. And most of, what's funny too, is because I'm podiatry and it's, I would have thought I would have been talking mostly with other podiatrists. I'm not. Like I'm mostly talking with I'll talk to OB-GYN and ophthalmology and it's everybody, because private practice is private practice. It's a business and we practice medicine. That's it. It really does not matter that I build different codes.
And at the end of the day, marketing and the other ways that you help think about that practice, it has less to do about your subspecialty and more just about the business of medicine, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. And what you want that to look like. I know in residency for me, even the private practices that I shadowed around, they all did what everybody else did. And, it was like, oh, you have to see from A to Z and, everybody's billed insurance and somebody else handles this. I don't worry about it. That was the number one thing with billing that I was like, really? We don't worry about that?
Actually, no, that's actually one of the things you do want to worry about.
Yeah, that seems pretty important.
How you get
paid. Yeah, that matters. But it was there wasn't much talk about the business side of it. And I understand that now because, at the time, we're there to learn medicine. We're still trying to get a hold of, oh my gosh, how do I treat this patient? And that's different from this. And did I miss anything? And, these are the things that are running through your head, not how do I run a business? And so I think it becomes really intimidating. And I've realized that no matter your specialty, we're busy taking care of patients. So if you can set up the systems and the support, from a good billing company, from, your CPA, from there's a team of people that you will put together that as long as you have that good relationship with them and you are tracking it, you can do what you want to do. You can treat your patients, you can practice medicine, And you can have that freedom of running your own business. You don't have somebody telling you, you have to take so much call. You have to do so many hours. I need you to see 55 patients in a day. We're only going to pay you based on your relative value units. Like, you don't have to deal with any of that. Like, if I want to see 20 people in a day, great. If I'm like, I want to work a half day that day, I'm going to see 8 people. Cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Done.
That's fine. I know what the decision is, right? Like, I know what I need to have brought in earlier that week in order to allow me to work, only 4 hours that Thursday. But, I can make those decisions. And I think having that freedom of, really dictating that patient doctor relationship again, I think that's how we're going to get back into doctors having a little more control over their lives and over medicine.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And it's that autonomy, I think, that also helps manage burnout, right? Because
it does.
As you are able to make your own decisions and the consequences of those decisions, right? I mean, you know that if you choose not to work next week, that does impact your revenue. But at the same time, if you've planned for that, and if you're like, well, here's my revenue goal, and I want to balance being able to take vacation, however frequently you want, then that's a decision you get to make. So
yeah. Like, I know a gentleman, and I love this. I mean, he's just got a small practice, he just does his thing. His overhead's not very big, but like, he literally works 6 days, sees like 90 people in 6 days. And then he goes skiing for 6 days. And then he comes back and he works for 6 days, and then he goes skiing for 6 days. Like, I love it. And he's like at retirement age. He just doesn't, he's like, I might sell it eventually, whatever. But like, he's perfectly happy doing that. But he's been in private practice this whole time. I'm like, that's what that allows you to do. It allows you to live your life the way you want to live it.
Yeah.
So it's super important in managing burnout, because that is probably the number one thing, especially for female physicians, that I am hearing when I'm talking with other docs, is that they're just exhausted. Like, there's a moral injury with, having to be told how you're going to treat your patients, and then to still feel like you're having to work so much that you're not able to spend time with your family. It's really, really hard. And I think people deserve to not have to deal with that. Like, make your life what you want.
So talk to me about your ideal client.
Oh, my ideal client is somebody who is, I think, just ready to make a change, is ready to really make their life what they want, and is at that place, So I've certainly had clients that are starting from scratch, and they're at the place where they need help with, where do I go to get signed up? Like, what do I have to do with Secretary of State? How do I register my business? Like, do I need to get with the Department of Revenue? Like, those are things that now, having set up 3 separate businesses, like, I'm pretty good with that. Like that, that I could do in an afternoon. Like, we got this, so like, some of that's super quick. Other stuff is actually really taking a deep dive into, how is it that you're doing things in your office on a day-to-day basis? Walk me through how that works. And sometimes, we'll use video to, have them walk me through. They'll have a staff member that kind of, has the camera with them, or is at least kind of recording how they're interacting with patients. Because sometimes it's a matter of they're not getting, people on board with their treatment plans. So they're not able to sell some of the ancillary services that they think would be good for patients. Sometimes it's just that, like, they're not running things efficiently. But the ideal client is the one that is like, okay, I'm open. Not only am I open to help, but like, I know that I'm going to have to get real with myself about like what can change. Because a lot of this is some self-reflection. And that's really the best way to put it. As I've worked through it over the years, I have definitely had days where I've been pulling my hair out with tears. Like, what am I doing, with my life? Like, who decided to do this? I decided to do this. And it just guided me into realizing, like, okay, I don't want to practice this way. This whole, for me personally, this whole, like, just seeing as many insurance patients as I possibly can in a day is wearing me out. My interactions with patients it takes a lot of energy out of me. And I've had to admit that to myself and not feel like I'm, not a good doctor because of that. It's just how I am. I'm a little more introverted. And most people wouldn't think that when they meet me.
I was about to say, I
am.
would not ever think that.
Yeah, no, I totally am. Like, I would be perfectly happy just sitting in my garden all day and not ever talking to another human being. My poor husband knows this. So for me, it takes quite a bit of energy to be around that many people in a day and one-on-one interactions with them. And so, I've had to recognize that, like, okay, I do better doing all of that in one day. Because once I switch that on for myself, I'm good to go. So I'll work like 9 to 7, 3 days a week. But I have no ability to go to work and then come home at noon and turn it off. Right. I'm not that person.
Right.
Some people are, and man, kudos to them. Like, work a half day, 6 days a week, go for it. But I'm not that person. And, you have to be open to really looking at what is it that's going to work for me? What do I prioritize in my life? What do I want out of life? How many vacations do I want to take? And that's okay. Because I think when you're ready to start making those changes, that's when I can really help you do some work. Like, we can get creative. It's good.
And how incredible is it? I mean, just the idea that you've been able to say, this is how I like my day. And this is how I'm going to be able to make that happen in my business, in my practice, be profitable, have some passive income. I mean, I am just in awe. That is so awesome. And I know so many of our listeners and our clients who do have, their own wishes and desires for their practice, and to complement, whether it's our billing service or heck, even their own billing service that they have with something like what you offer, to me is just a home run. Okay. So how do people find you? What's your website? What's your email? How do people find you?
If anybody wants to get a hold of me, just honestly send me an email. It's going to be all lowercase. It's Dr. Sarah, SARAH, VPS for Visionary Practice Solutions @gmail.com.
Okay.
And then I also have Dr. Sarah Coaching on Instagram, and you can reach me there too.
For our listeners, I will have all of these on the show notes, so you can take a look at that, and in the post on our Facebook group, RevMD. So with that, I want to say thank you so much to Dr. Sarah for coming on. I am so excited about this episode. I'm so excited about the services you're offering and just the tips you brought with regards to how to make your practice profitable.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for offering the services that you do. Like, really, truly, everybody, this is the team you need. So get on it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for joining us this week. If you missed our Metric Mastermind, feel free to join the waitlist. We're going to do another one here in the fall. And if there are any questions you guys have about your billing metrics or your billing process, feel free to reach out at info@nationalrevenueconsulting.com. And as always, share with a friend or invite them to the Facebook group RevMD.